This podcast is sponsored by Systems Accountants, a specialist global resourcing solutions company focused exclusively on accounting technology and finance transformation.
When it comes to the top coaches in the HSBC Sevens World Series, Mike Friday easily ranks among them, having coached the most successful teams ever for England, Kenya and currently the USA. But not many rugby fans will know that Mike is also a successful businessman, having co-founded Bounce Life Limited in the United Kingdom. The Rugby Business Network has the privilege of speaking to this extremely skilled individual. Mike, thanks for taking the time away from your demanding schedule to chat to us.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, great to chat.
Firstly, Mike, let's talk about the Sevens World Series quickly. It's been a long series with one final tournament to come in London this weekend. How would you assess the Eagles' progress and your guidance this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a difficult season post-Olympics, but, there's always restrictions and pressures, both financial, on a lot of the programs. And for us in America, where we're deemed to be the land of hope and opportunity. We've got huge financial pressures, as well as a playing squad that's quite small, because rugby is very much a minority game in America, and we need to reposition rugby for it to complement the traditional super games of American football and basketball. And that's going to take a significant amount of education and time and marketing to do that. But if we can do that, then rugby will appeal to the sporting public of America, as we saw in the Olympics. They kind of took it to their hearts, and there's significant interest in America, but we need to capitalise on that. And the USA Sevens team is very much kind of the market shop window for that. And we're having our best season ever. We're sitting fifth in the world at the moment. Just the traditional Super Rugby powers of South Africa, England, New Zealand and Fiji above us. And, we've got a possibility of actually catching New Zealand as well. So if we were able to break into the top four this year, it would be, an unbelievable achievement for a Tier 2 rugby nation, kind of sitting at the top table with the Super Rugby powers. So it does show how far we've come as a team, how collegiate we are as a team, how hard we've worked as a team. But, top four is kind of not what we want to be. We want to be kind of number one in the world, and that's a dream and an aspiration that we're working towards, for 2020 and the Olympics in Tokyo.
Well, away from the rugby field, Mike, you are equally busy with your health, well-being and insurance brokerage business, Bounce Life. What interested in you in creating this sort of a business, and has it been going according to plan since its inception in May last year?
Yeah, I mean, it's still very early days, but nothing ventured, nothing gained, and I'm always one that I need to keep myself busy, and I've got interests outside of sport, and having worked in the property industry for 20, 25 years whilst I was a professional player and also coaching, it's important for me that I have other interests and I have other business interests which keep the mind sharp, and sometimes a change is as good as a rest. So. Yeah. What interests me more importantly, about kind of well-being and health is like in the modern world that we're in now, where nobody has enough time for themselves, is that you have to try and create time. You have to take an interest. You have to invest in yourself and your own well-being to get the best out of you. No different if you want to be the top in your sport. It's no different if you want to be the top in business at what you do. You have to invest in yourself, and educating and providing opportunities and a service for people to do that is important. And it kind of sat quite well in the fact that, everybody needs life insurance. I think with where the world is going with the NHS and medical cover, I think everybody needs to invest in their private medical insurance as well, but it needs to be affordable. But also it needs to sit so that as the person that's kind of benefiting or paying out and investing in their private medical insurance or life insurance, that they're actually getting something back if they're actually doing a good job in looking after themselves and trying to stay healthy and trying to actively lower the risks of anything adversely happening to them. And it's like if you've got a healthy mind and a healthy body, then you're more proactive and you're more active and you're more efficient and effective in the workplace. So, vitality is one of the key products that Bounce Life kind of advocates. It's not the only product, because we're multi-tied as an insurance business, but it's a key driver in terms of holistic well-being that we want to we want to kind of promote. And that was the driver behind it. And then for me, it was about, well, how can I utilise my skills in teamwork, team dynamics, trying to build teams. And that's why we kind of looked at the direct selling model and multi-level marketing infrastructure and framework to build the business and promote the business. Because, in the modern world, all the households need to try and create and take ownership of trying to create additional income streams for themselves. And we wanted to provide those that want to get up and go an opportunity of doing that. So not a win-win situations, but it's about kind of joining the dots and then motivating and giving direction and inspiring those that want to be a part of the Bounce network on how they can go about generating income streams for themselves, but also kind of spreading the word and trying to get the UK population healthier and more invested in their own well-being. So that's the philosophy. In terms of how we're going, it's like all things. We're building slowly, but we're, like all businesses, they need to invest. But more importantly, we need to make sure that we're profitable. And we're starting to put the foundations in place that as a business we're developing nicely, shall we say. We're not a big beast, but there's scalability opportunities in the future. But we've got to continue to kind of work hard right now to put those building blocks and those foundations and make sure we get the right people in our team working with us so that we can kind of build the business and move forward.
Well, Mike, some people might think you must have a clone because in order to fulfill responsibilities with the USA Sevens team and running a successful business can be tricky. What's the secret in being able to juggle both efficiently?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just me, if I'm honest. I mean, in both fronts. I mean, in Bounce Life, for example, my co-founder, my partner, Ashley Redding, he's a huge driving force. Yeah. The kind of in the day-to-day running, and he's the key driving force that I kind of sit and complement and work with in order to try and grow the brand, the Bounce Life, but also the philosophy of what we're trying to create and help attract the right type of people to be a part of the team, because that's so important in any sort of team, is that you have the right dynamics, the right individuals that match the DNA that you're trying to create in that company and that business. And that's the same with the USA team. We're 3 years into our challenge, into trying to kind of pioneer the sport into the USA and take on the rest of the world and be seen as that kind of contender and, vying for those top spots. And, I've got a great team around me in the USA, which, again, buy into the philosophy and are one with the DNA required to be a successful part of our USA Sevens Rugby team. And, in both parts, it's not about what I do, it's about the people that you do it with and being at one with them and making sure that, that the communication, the dynamics is transparent, is clear, is motivating and honest. And, that can mean sometimes not just having the hard word, but also the arm of support and bringing consistency in everything you do. So that's kind of how I manage to kind of keep both things moving forward. And it's so important that I'm fortunate enough that I work with some great people, both with Bounce Life, but also in the USA Sevens. My management team, Chris Brown on the ground, Phil Greening, Sarah Sole, Brian Green, John Hood. You're a tight unit, a tight leadership team. And if you've got a tight leadership team that are putting in the right direction, understanding of where we're trying to get to, then it does make things easier. It means you can share the load.
Mike, you touched on it just now, and for those that have been onto the Bounce Life website, they'll clearly notice that playing sport and keeping active is very much part of the philosophy of your business. Would you say this is one of the features which separates Bounce Life from other insurance brokers?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're not just interested in, for want of a word, selling the plan.
Yeah.
What we're interested in is that the individuals are engaging in making the most out of that plan and maximising the benefits and the opportunities it provides, because that works twofold. Ultimately, then it becomes more enjoyable for the individual. But secondly, they get rewards and benefits for doing so, because it's quite a simplistic kind of outlook, is the fact that insurance underwriters don't want you to claim, much like the applicant doesn't want to claim, because that normally means bad news. So if you incentivise and you provide benefits to to create opportunities so that people will mitigate the risk of them claiming, it makes sense. But it's also about that engagement and that empowerment that you need to provide as part of your customer service to ensure that, one, you've ensured that the individual, you understand what the individual needs and the plan works and fits with them, but also then that they are able to understand and maximise the potential of that plan. And it's not about being, that person that kills themselves every time in the gym, all the time, every time. It's about living healthily, not just in the gym, but also your well-being, what you do in your downtime, actually what your leisure time is, taking breaks. It's understanding the different ways you can take a holistic view on your well-being, which will ultimately, will put you in a better place physically and mentally to enjoy life. And if you're in a better place physically and mentally and enjoy life, then more importantly, for you as an individual, also those that you work for, you will be more efficient and effective. So everybody can have everything. It just takes a little bit of active engagement and understanding and education, and that's a part of what we do as well. We're passionate about people trying to maximise their potential. I think it's probably the best way of putting it. And sports people kind of understand that. So we've got some sports people that are involved, that be them ex-pros that have played at higher up in the game, or not just in rugby, but in the leisure industry, because they understand what it takes. And it's not about necessarily being elite, but it's about motivating and inspiring the everyday person as well, that they can live healthily without giving up all of their treats and luxuries.
Well, Mike, having played professional rugby yourself with the London Wasps, among other teams in the past, you would know that making smart career decisions before hanging up those boots is imperative. Yeah. Were you one of the fortunate players to have kept this in mind before ending your playing days? And what advice could you give?
Yeah, I was. The reality is I was part of the mob, shall we say, that bridged amateur and professional. But what I made sure I did was that I finished my professional qualification, which I did in the first year of professionalism. And then I had an opportunity of giving up or taking a career break. Or I was fortunate. I went and spoke to my company, and I said, look, I want to be a professional rugby player, which means that I can only do this in terms of time with you. Does that mean I have to resign, or is there a way in which we could work together? And I was fortunate that my employer was, if I was prepared to be understanding on the remuneration front, that would work with me and allow me to maintain my professional development and maintain a business life whilst I was playing professionally. And you can balance it. Training takes up so much of the week, agreed, and then there's a recovery element. But the younger a player can start to experience and invest in his future, be it from an education perspective or actively looking for internships whilst they're playing, then the better. And for me, at the end of training, I used to put my suit on and I used to go into work, even if it was 2 or 3 hours or if it was longer. Whilst a lot of the other boys used to go home and play and play on the computer games and sit on the sofa and do nothing. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I think that every individual has a choice. And you can choose when you decide to take ownership of your future, and you can choose to take ownership of when you clearly know that rugby won't last forever. And I decided to ensure I did that at an earlier age, and I never saw the benefits of that until my career decision of when I was retiring came upon me, and I was able to make sure that was my decision and my timing, because I had invested in my future, which meant that seamless changeover from playing rugby into no longer playing rugby professionally was a lot easier for me, because I'd laid the foundation and I'd put some of the hard work in earlier. And that would be the advice I give every young professional player. It doesn't last forever. Yeah. You need to enjoy it when you're playing, but you do need to plan for the future, and you have got free time in your working week, as much as you may not think you have when you're playing. Trust me, when you go to work in the real world, you will realise how much free time you did have. And your problem is when you say that to a young player, they think you're patronising them. But the harsh reality is you kind of, if I had known then what I know now, it's the same thing. You feel like your dad. Thinking, I remember having this conversation before. That would be the words I pass on to any young player. Enjoy playing, treasure every moment of it and work hard to be the best player you can, but use your spare time wisely.
Definitely. Sound advice, Mike. Circling back now to Sevens Rugby, this form of the game perhaps does not receive the same amount of recognition and support as the 15-man format does, whether it's professional or semi-professional. Therefore, when it comes to financial backing, which you touched on at the start of our interview, it's not really the same. This obviously trickles down and it affects the players and requires them to be smart about their financial decisions they're going to make. What kind of challenges have you witnessed with your players when you coach the England and the Kenyan teams and now also with the USA side?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. It depends what kind of country landscape you're in. I mean, if you're in the likes of New Zealand and England, South Africa, then, you know, the landscape's very much the 15s is the pinnacle of the game.
Yeah.
But when you come to the likes of Kenya and USA, the pinnacle of the game, the shot window is the sevens. So it's kind of role reversal because, especially in the likes of America, is that the shot window for the game is sevens. You know, that's in order to unlock the keys to the kingdom in America, it's going to require sevens being at the forefront and being highly successful for them. So the investment is potentially should be more into there, because that will then lead to the snowball effect to then allow 15 to kick off. And that's the same in Kenya. And that's the same in these countries. But that's what Sevens does. It allows access to all of those countries that aren't the traditional Super Rugby powers to introduction to the game, which then can make it truly global across men and women, because you need less players. You don't need to understand the technical nuances of scrum and line out and back three positioning. And it's about the core attributes of the game, the basics of the game. And it will allow these countries to get to a position where they're able to compete a lot quicker on the world stage. As you see in the World 7 Series, any team from 12 or 13 can win a tournament. Now, that becomes very exciting as a sporting spectacle to the world. As we saw in the Olympics, it was gladiator. It was almost like warrior-like. And that hits the sporting eyeballs of the world. You know, we're quite insular in the rugby world, is because we when we think about the 15s, we think about the traditional rugby nations of, you know, England, you know, France, Australia, New Zealand, you know. But in terms of their mass in the world as countries, we need to be hitting China.
Yeah.
We need to see the game exploding like it is in Russia and the USA. These are huge land masses, which are huge populations in the world and eyeballs on the game, which will truly make the game global. So if we can harness and embrace the game in these geographies, and sevens is the key to doing that, then all of a sudden we truly will have a global game. It will never compete with the 15s and the Super Rugby nations, and nor should it, you know, because that's historically always will be the pinnacle of the game. But it can be a game that opens the doors to global participation and truly makes the game of rugby global and across men and women. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do here. You know, you can have the pinnacles in the 15s game, you can have the pinnacles in the sevens, but it is also about opening the world to the global participation of the game. And I think sevens is the perfect marketing tool to do that. And then as a consequence, then we will start to see, you know, the sponsors and the broadcasters start to realise that the eyeballs on it will mean that it becomes quite an attractive entity in its own right. But will be a very different marketing proposition and a game to the traditional pinnacle of the game, which is rugby 15.
Finally, Mark, as you say, the players need to enjoy their time while they're still playing rugby, but also take into consideration what they're going to do once it's time to end it all. What would you suggest, though, that players do while they are still running out onto the field for their respective teams to give themselves a better chance of getting ahead when it all comes to an end one day?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I can only talk from what I see in the UK and what the RPA do, but I think any sort of, you need to find out about yourself as a rugby player. And when I say not, you know, find out about yourself, I'm not sit down on a psychologist's sofa and talk to me. I mean, there are so many tools, you know, personality tests, understand your learning strategies, your communication strategies, to see where your synergies fit within certain career paths. So you've got to start to explore and understand what you want to do after rugby, what you may be suited to. So in order to do that, you've got to understand yourself. And you know, the RPA offer personalities. The Rugby Business Network, have a huge kind of resource to assist players on working out where they may or may not be suited, because it's like all things. You sometimes you don't know what you want to be doing or what you're going to be suited to, because all you know is I turn up for this time to train and I finish training at that time. So I would urge players to explore that, and I would also urge players to commit fully to internships, and they may be unpaid, and you may have to go in and feel awkward and feel in a position that you don't quite like to do, but. No, if you want to get, if it was easy, then everybody would do it. That's what everybody says to them as a rugby player. So you've now got to cross into Civvy Street and be uncomfortable with those people that are experts in what they do, and embrace that challenge and enjoy that learning, and experience different experiences in the workplace and take it for what it is, because it will not only give you insight into business, but it will give you insight into life skills, how to communicate, how to socialise in environments that you feel awkward or you feel uncomfortable in, which is a big part of life after rugby, and also how to create networks and how to start to put together possible opportunities for you, or be creative and entrepreneur in the businesses or business lines you could move into. So I think the RPA and things like the RBN and Rugby Business Network are fantastic vehicles that all players need to explore and invest some time to find out, and see what suits them, because they're quite an attractive proposition when you're playing, because everybody's interested in what you're doing. But the skill of that young rugby player is also to listen and actually start to glean what those people they're talking to are doing as well, and whether or not they would be suited, or whether or not they might know other businesses that they could be suited to, and then go out and give it a go.
Fantastic. Mike, it's been an insightful conversation, and thank you for taking the time to chat with us at the Rugby Business Network, and all the best for you with both the US Sevens team and Bounce Life.
Thank you.